All right, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a little bit since I recorded something. I'm just busy with work and busy assembling and painting and all that kind of stuff. I actually got 6 of these that I'm working on, as well as the Weaver quartz box and all. So that's mostly done, but we're getting there. And today they did another happy hour. I want to discuss some things said there, thoughts on all of that and all. Now, if you want to watch the whole thing, obviously you can go through it and you can listen to all of that. Maybe this is of no interest to you if you did that. But for other people, we're just going to take a look and talk a little bit about it. So, for this particular happy hour, main focus is obviously were Weaver Quartz. They did talk about some ITC style events. So, for anyone who isn't aware, this is international team. If you're in America, it's like international team or tournament circuit, essentially is what ITC is. For this, they were talking to some people from France. It's a little bit different. We do a similar thing here where it's essentially teams. So I think there it was like the international team championship or whatever they might have called it. Though we have somewhat similar here. In 40K, they do this a lot. And there it's 5-person teams. And in that, what essentially happens is you have team captains. They go back and forth and choose matchups and things like that. So there's a lot to that. But they're doing that as well. So there's some groups out of France working on it, and they're going to move it around and all. They've done it before. Honestly, I think that's really cool. I do like the idea of people looking at what else is being done in other avenues, what other tournament, either tournament styles, play styles, all those pieces are being done elsewhere, and then just do the same thing. I mean, the idea of a team tournament, that sort of stuff, none of that is new. They've been doing that stuff for, decades. Back in old Warhammer Fantasy is something we used to do and all those sorts of things. So there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if something is already being done well and you like what's being done. So do that. Tweak it as you need. They also showed and talked a little bit about, and they've done this before, talking about, hey, team games, how do those kind of work? What are these sort of open play or more story focused game styles where, hey, you can go through and playing in the games, you might unlock different achievements, and those achievements will do something for you and all. We see this happening here. We see it happen as well as other spots. Arkham Horror, the card game, if anyone follows that, because that's a game that I love to play as well. In Arkham Horror, the card game, they're doing that. They're essentially saying, hey, with the second season, because they're pretty much calling it season 2 or act 2, post Cthulhu messing everything up. But effectively in that, what they've said is, hey, you achieve something by the end of campaign, you get a cool upgrade card, and that's a card available to you now for future campaigns or for future times you use that particular investigator and all of that. So they talked about all those sorts of things. All that is great. Any way that you can get different play styles out and increase exposure for this game, all the better. Oh, and obviously this is for Parallel Games. I don't know if I said that in the beginning, but this is mostly what I've been covering lately. Although I am supposed to play a Horus Heresy game on Sunday, which means after that I will have some thoughts and some discussion on the newest edition as well. But I just haven't got my hands onto it enough. So that's what I'm supposed to be doing on Sunday. So maybe there'll be some other stuff on this channel at that point. Oh, and PAX Unplugged is coming up, so we'll also be doing some board game discussion. Not that they're very popular, but I enjoy them. So, but anything that you can do that has other people look at the game is a good thing. And anything where you can say, here's the way in which we play, and we play in a variety of different ways, and here's a new way in which we play, helps out. I know a lot of people who loved X-Wing the way it was at the one point, but I played a lot of X-Wing. Still have some upstairs I gotta try to get rid of. My biggest problem was always the idea that it just became a, pure destruction sort of game. I want something else. I personally don't want to play the same style of thing time after time after time. And I know, yes, other things change and all that. And we can have those discussions. But I like when there's a mission. I like when there's a different theming, when there's something to it. So they talked about all of that. And then they showed us some very nice pictures and talked about it. And I shout out to, it's actually on a different Discord. Person there actually grabs all the images, which is nice and helps me out. They're not necessarily doing it for me. They're just doing it for the Discord, but I grab them anyway. But The actually at this point have posted them on the store, so we're going to take a look at it from that viewpoint in a second. So they showed off the Skell dancers. So they essentially, it's a little bit hard to see here, but you can actually see it has a tail. They're essentially, I guess, dragonfly by the look of the wings and things like that. Dragonfly with their whips. They talked a little bit about it. I that little tiny bit of a connection. I want more connection personally. And that's just because, I don't know, I'm not as careful with my models as maybe I should be. I try to be. But like I said, I'm this for a flight stand. I pop it back this way in case you're looking. This for a flight stand, not enough. Please do something more. But we can see right here the way these. Well, okay, the one has a lady's face, but I was going to say ladies either way. That's just the way that I view them. Overall, I do think they have a very nice look. They essentially said something I thought was actually very interesting when they talked about it. They said that, hey, we started with what you would need to kind of have an army. And now we get to do the fun, cool things or show some of the more interesting things that really set this army apart. You know, when you look at Cairn Skirmishers, they're an archery unit. They look like an archery unit. Yes, they have a bit of a theme to them because it looks like they're wearing essentially moss and or a leaf overcoat, jacket, or vest, however you want to think about it. But they look like archers. Yes, the moths are of interest. The Kron, the Guardians, they're trees. For all intents and purposes, they are trees. They're nice looking trees because of the way the top, but they're just trees. Now we're starting to get into the weird. So, sorry, I have to get good at the pronunciations. That's why I still have it on the sideboard. Skell. These Skell dancers. So I'm just pulling up. I have off on the side for rules and all. 170 points for the three of them. Fly. So we see, okay, a lot of this army has fly. So we can see, hey, you might have fly because you have literal wings like this one does here. They're relentless blows and all. They do look neat. They have parry and all that kind of stuff. They have their own special rule. They got some counterattack and all of that. I don't know if they're going to be super effective, but they look super neat. And they did mention release date is end of December, but sell them as soon as you get them in hand. A lot of stores get them early because their hope is to get them essentially under people's Christmas trees. Very neat. I'm currently feeling like a box is probably good. I don't think I really want a big unit of them. They obviously showed off the drakes. They showed off the will-o-wisps. One thing they talked about the will-o-wisps, and it's true from this, you don't get a good feeling for the size. When you look at this, I guess, you could math it out where you could take a look at what the length of this base is, depending on its angles, and measure up as well. But they did say this is essentially one of the taller brutes that they have. It beats overall the size of most brutes. So I guess they are quite large. They were essentially trying to, I don't want to use the words justify the price. The price is whatever they deem the price needs to be, should be, and can be. But they were trying to say, hey, it's a little bit more than an average brute because these things are a bit more than an average brute. I do feel will-o-wisp. I'm back and forth. I'll be honest. I'm back and forth on the models for will-o-wisps. I feel like I should like them more. I don't know why I don't. There's nothing wrong with them in general. I think they're actually pretty good in game. Actually, I feel game I played the other day, I didn't use any, but I kind of feel like they have a really good strength. I'll talk about that game, the generalities in a little bit. I did take pictures. I did want to talk about the game overall, but I'm missing parts of my opponent's list, and I reached out to him to tell me the parts that I'm missing, and he just didn't get back to me. My guess, he was probably just busy or something like that, didn't notice it, whatever it may be. But I'm like 100 points short when I put his list together. I'm sure it's upgrades, but I'm not sure which upgrades it was. Though I guess if I don't know which upgrades, they must not have been that impactful, because otherwise I would have remembered what the upgrade did. But I will say, having played the army, I'm gonna play it more this weekend as well. Having played the army without, say, will-o-wisps, or just in general, one thing is trying to get seasons to go off when you want them. So I had a particular spot in there when I was able to get Autumn, which gives the shock if you charge that opponent unit, to go off on a unit effectively like mid-turn. There's a way in which it happens, and when I go over it, I'll explain the way it happened there. But it went off mid-turn, and then I had a unit that got to charge in, so hey, they got that shock, especially because that opponent had a rule on them that meant I didn't get to do an Inspire. Effectively, it was Dread, but I don't know if it was actually worded, it was labeled as Dread, which means at least I got the shock. So I was still able to get a +1 to be able to get better numbers so I can actually get some dice to hit. So Will-O-Wisp being able to get the markers to effectively go off in the middle and shoot through and block up for reasonably cheap, this does feel like an army that does need some blockers. Most of your units can't take a hit or don't take a hit well at all. They get bloodied very easily. So I'm kind of feeling like they're very important. And just for some reason, I don't know. I'm not huge on them personally, and I don't have a good reason why. The Drakes, I talked more about those. The Drakes are absolutely great, and they are great in game. Especially was a Coil Drake, because you can hop on top of that. The other thing was the Gevra Knights. So they showed us some pictures. You can see the pictures better from here. That's why I'm just showing them from here instead. For these Gevra Knights, one thing they told us, one, they all have tactical rocks. The reason they have tactical rocks, I see it better here. What we were told is this knee is like the height of, I believe they talked about Ashen Dawn. That's like the height of the Ashen Dawn right there to the knee. Or even if it's, I don't know, pick any of the Cav units. These guys are apparently that much taller than the Cav. So, you know, they're that higher on par price because apparently they're like the biggest brutes that they have done. These guys are apparently massive. One, absolutely love that they're moose. The effect is painted on for the tattooing. I do plan to do tattooing like that. I think it's very interesting that they effectively have a mask on. They actually don't have their face. It's more of a humanoid face on the front of this. I think that's pretty interesting. I think you could go... There's not... The paint job is very nice, but I think you could go... Since these guys are winter, you could really try to either play into that or go lighter colors or maybe much darker tones and put some snow on them and all. That's sort of my sort of thought process. I think you can do a lot with this sort of mask face. I think you could go, you know, very outlandish with that if you wanted. But apparently, and the people on it look fine as well. I do like they kind of did this sort of tattooed patterns onto them. But apparently these models are just huge. And again, as soon as you get them, allowed to sell them. I'm very excited for these guys. One, I think the army... I don't like to use the word need. Because I don't think that that's ever truly true. But when I take a look at the Gevra Knights, 240 points, but hey, they got a lot of wounds. They got that... 3 defense is pretty common, or actually it's not as common as army. They got a lot of 2s. But 3 defense, 4 evades, which is really nice. They cleave, they impact, they brutal impact. They have unstoppable. Certain turns, like winter turns, they'll have Juggernaut. They're a very strong Cav piece, and they are a good punch. They're a little bit slow at move 6, but they're a good puncher. They actually can take a bit of a hit with a good amount of wounds, but they're a very good punching unit. They don't mind necessarily the move charge, because they'll at least get something in on that. And the rest of your army, a lot of the units don't survive great, or they don't have the best defenses. They're a little bit more glass cannon, or just at least glass, not always cannon. Which means having a big, bulky unit you can shove into someone's face helps you out a lot. Even if all it does is have them pour tons of concern into it. That's great. So, absolutely one of these Gevra Knights. I don't know, I don't think the way that I run lists that I would run 2 full packs, still 3 packs, but I would consider running a 4-pack. So I am a little bit worried that I'll need more than 1 box, but I personally, with a lot of these things, as time permits, I try to go a little bit extra, or I proxy until I can get that. At least all the areas I am, hey, we proxy, we do whatever until we can get to having enough of it. But I'm very happy with the things that they showed. I think they're showing the ability to really get to an army pretty well. The other thing, I just pulled it down because of where I have it. I don't have it in a big piece, so I just want to pull it up there. Also, they showed, or they talked about, sorry, the Skihan, the Skihan Hunters, end of January, Myrmidons end of February, Glasgow Warriors, as well as the Fianna Cav are Q2, and the Wild Hunt at some point. I'm sure they're going to try to get that as soon as they can. But if they do all that, that just leaves the Maidens. So they're essentially saying by about Q2, sometime in Q2, my guess is that means probably by April or May. It might be some others in May. But by May of next year, we'll pretty much have the army. For anyone who's been playing this game for a while, you will know, now they did this for Sorcerer Kings to an extent. They did this very well for Euroni, and they're doing it here as well. It really sucks if, hey, here's my new army. I'm really excited to play them. And most of it isn't there. Yes, if you're playing for fun, you're playing with friends, just proxy stuff. Please let people do that. But if you're going to a tournament, I can understand why it might matter. Again, some of our tournaments we proxy stuff, other ones, a little bit more official. But you can feel like you don't really have a force to play with. You just have some bits. And you don't necessarily want to make a 2,000 point army out of a bunch of current skirmishers and stuff like that. You want the other pieces. I don't want to paint up, 12 stands of a unit that I will never take that many of, but it's the only thing I got right now. So by the time Christmas is done, by the time you get into the new year, you're going to have enough to make a viable list that you're going to like, and then wait about another quarter or maybe less, and you're going to have most of the rest of the force. So I think that's actually really great. I do think I'm iffy on where I think Weaver Courts are in terms of power, but we'll discuss that in a moment towards the end of this. The other thing they talked about spires. So they said, sorry, here it is. How to find it. For spires, they are the next ones up for being redone. So we don't know exactly when. We know in January they're going to do another one of these, and they'll probably talk about it then, but hopefully early in the year we'll get them. Hey, they got a new campaign. They're getting this alchemist figure, which I think is actually really nice. Original Spire stuff is kind of hokey, mostly just because it's some of the first models they did. Later stuff, they really got a very good defined look in terms of, I guess, I don't know, you want to say clean lines and all. If you ever looked at really old or bad models, you can kind of tell, like, think about old Tau. The legs were essentially, the armor plates were pretty much flat. The definition wasn't really there. A lot more definition. They had new Merchant Prince. They even talked about how they have, was that right? No, where is it? He's got a little cat, which I think is really great. This is going to be a special Leonin. Lineage Highborn. My apologies. Lineage Highborn, not Leonin. Lineage Highborn. Consumption Beast, the Desolation Beast. Supercharged starter set, sure, all of it in Q1. We don't know the exact dates and all. They showed a little bit of this, just talking about how, Desolation versus Consumption. Desolation is more of, I guess, ranged. Consumption is more close combat. Look at that giant mouth. Very cool looking. Can't wait to see the rest of it. Always enjoyed Spires. I played them quite a few times. I enjoy the look of them. And they did say, though, that the playstyle is going to greatly change. So if you're currently playing Spires, let's hope you love whatever they do. If you are thinking about picking them up, I'd wait. Honestly, if you're really unsure about something, if you know you're the type who's very picky about what you play, wait. Wait until you see exactly what they do with those spires. If you know you probably want to do them either way, then let's pick up like a box and start painting up some stuff. Paint up newer things, though, because for all we know, they might redo some drones or clones or something like that. So I would pick up one of the newer starters. One of the ones that has maybe more of like the centaurs and all of that, or the centaurs and the Avatara, all those sort of things. They did talk about the Krampus. Krampus is a really good looking model. But essentially, those are the main things that they discussed. The other big thing that we want to talk about is they talked about First Blood, and maybe that's the most interesting part here. Um, we have done First Blood content on this channel in the past. I've done some battle reports with Dan and Steve and played some games with some other people. Some of them made them up, some of them just didn't, for a variety of reasons. If you've never recorded a bunch of stuff, sometimes it just doesn't work the way you want, or you plan to add stuff into it and you realize, oh, I didn't do the things the way I should have. But First Blood, honestly, was a hot mess. It's a hot mess. It really is. There's a few reasons why I feel that way. One, in its current iteration, it absolutely feels like it's trying to be TLUK light. The rules are just, and what was that? What else was I talking about this with? Oh, when I'm talking about hyperbolic trigonometric functions in my calculus class, for anyone who doesn't know, they're trig functions using exponentials for all intents and purposes. There's more to it than that, but let's make it nice and easy glossing. The big thing is if you know a lot of your trig stuff and you learn these things, they're just different enough to confuse you. And that's essentially what First Blood is. The rules and all are just similar enough to cause you a problem. Some of the special rules, the special rules are there. They don't always do the same thing. So like fluid formation in TLUK, hey, you can pivot, you can turn, all that kind of stuff. You can't be wider than 3, but you can change your facings and rearrange your unit. Cool. Excuse me. But since the units are individualized, or the models are individualized, oh, my apologies. In First Blood, it's like almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I do most of my work late at night. But then I also get up very early, so I just don't really sleep. But when we look at in that, hey, they want to have that rule, so we need something else. Oh, you get to ignore some terrain effects. Okay. There's enough other spots where the rules are just similar enough to confuse. So that's one thing. It's like it's trying to be that. It also, since it was still unit-based, like, yes, I take a unit of, I don't know, phalangites, let's say. It doesn't really matter what the unit is. They behave in a somewhat way that you think they should, but they're a bunch of individual guys. Okay, a little bit easier in movement because you got to be near whoever the leader is or character in certain units where you have characters. So easier to move, but it still, it felt like you wanted to play the full game, and this wasn't a good proxy to it. Not exactly, but it wasn't good enough on its own as it was. I found a lot of balance issues. That was a big thing for it, for me at least. That's not to say, okay, we can look at the Heos list and talk about balance in the game. They've changed things and updated some of those balances and all. But I would say overall, the big game is reasonably well balanced. If you want to go and just have fun, you'll have a fine time. And if you want to be competitive, you have some options and all, and I think you'll be okay. Overall, certain things might be a little bit better, but I think it's pretty decent, or as decent as you can usually get in these sort of games. First Blood feels very unbalanced to me, at least when I've played it. And I don't think it's a fault of the designers. I don't really blame them for that. I don't know exactly how you balance it. Just because, oh, we want to have monsters in there. Okay, so we got to make them a lot of points because they're strong. We can't make them too crazy, though. And since it's 1,000 points, oh, that's your 300-point monster. Or some of them actually closer to 500. Ah, yeah, but our missions require a lot of objectives. So you took this giant monster. It's like half of your points. You're in bad shape. One of the strongest lists that I ran against or saw run that I saw was essentially just taking tons of 100 Kingdom guys. A lot of people have 2 wounds, which means I could outwound you just in one single unit compared to your 500 plus points, and I did 100 some points kind of feel. That's fine if that's the design, but the missions don't necessarily support it. At least I didn't feel that they supported it. It felt like, it's the best way to put this. Maybe this is the best way to put this. I have had plenty of games, at various miniatures games, where the game could feel fine or feel very lopsided. And I've had plenty of games in full Conquest where the score doesn't tell the tale. The score might be rather lopsided, but you know what? The game was super close. It came down to the last few turns, and because of something that happened, some dice rolls, some fun that was had, that's what ended up lopsiding it. Because some of the missions you can score pretty high. Oh, so maybe I won by 30 points. Yeah, but that was really like the last 3 rounds. Before that, I was losing, or I was only up by like 5 or something like that. I feel like First Blood, when I sit down at the table and I look at my army compared to theirs, I almost felt like I kind of knew what was going to happen. Very true when I was playing Ironi, but even other armies, when I looked at it, it didn't feel like there was always that nice fair shake from both sides. What they're doing instead, and if you've played it and you disagree, or if you agree, let me know. But I do feel there was a problem with it in general. They wanted to be a skirmish game, but it wasn't really skirmish. It was lower models, but to me, that's not skirmish. Low model count doesn't make you a skirmish game in my mind. Skirmish game to me does mean low model count. You shouldn't call yourself a skirmish game if you have tons of models. But a skirmish game has certain feels to it. It feels much more individualized. It feels much more impactful what one individual does. That to me is what makes a game skirmish game. If you really think about it, you could theoretically, if you just want to say low model count, KLOK, yeah, it's a unit, has like 4 things on it. It saves an inventory base. But they're effectively just by markers. Those are nothing more than like the look of the thing. In reality, a 12 model 3-stand block is 3 items. We just put 4 models on them because they used to be related to the wounds, and that's how they do it now. It's just the infantry. That in itself is theoretically skirmished by the fact of small model count. You still don't have tons of stuff. You have, when I think of First Blood, people would still have 5-6 units. Yeah, in the full game, I do have more, but it's not like, it's not like you're going to dozens of units. Even then, in the small one, you could potentially have more. It just depends on what you're running. And your model count, I've went against some that were tons of models. I went against some lists that were still 20 plus models. Model kind of works like a stand sort of idea. So to me, it wasn't really skirmish. What they're going to do with it now, they didn't say that much. What they're going to do with it now actually is skirmish. So they're talking about, even though you might have units per se, they didn't tell us exactly what this meant. There's sort of unit and model activations, but everyone's still individual. So before, you were a unit, I walked separately, but otherwise you were a unit fully together. Now, apparently, no, you're actually separate. It's individual models. They said the count of models is probably going to be a little bit lower than it was before, which I think is absolutely fine. And they are going to Infinity system for all intents and purposes. For anyone who doesn't know the way it works in Infinity, Infinity is a D20 system instead, though. But Infinity is essentially a roll under system. And actually, in the newest edition, in N5, they updated everything to be roll under because saves used to be roll over, but now everything's an under sort of thing. That's the way they changed armor, the way it works and all. But effectively, we both roll our dice depending on our stats. Boom. And we look at, hey, what do my numbers look like compared to yours? If we're trying to get under, and there it's like highest without going over. So, not a perfect analogy, but close enough. But, if I hit on, say, a 10, then anything 10 and under for me is good. Oh, let's say you hit on a 12. Okay, so 12 and unders are good for you. But whoever has the better of the numbers gets to keep theirs. Now in theirs, it's highest without going over. It's essentially why can't I think of the show right now? Oh, that bugs me. The Price is Right. I was thinking Let's Make a Deal, but that's The Price is Right. There it's a highest without going over idea. But it's still the idea that, hey, your numbers that are worse than my numbers go away. And that's what they're doing here. Since Conquest is an under system, that means my lower numbers can cancel out your higher numbers. We don't know all the details of how it works, but they showed in their example that on both sides when they fought, both sides rolled a 4 for one of the die rolls, got canceled. But some of my numbers were better than yours, so they stuck around. So it seems like your stats and numbers are a little bit different. your attack saying that you roll 3 dice. My clash stat is, yeah, it's going to tell me the number I need, but I'm rolling those dice, and now I'm just putting those together, and now I'm going to cancel with what you roll as defense. And hey, if I hurt you, they showed that there's essentially a resolve type check to either survive it and maybe get pushed back or get destroyed. Now, we don't know much of the detail, but especially when they're talking about it, I felt a lot of Infinity vibes. I felt, to me, Infinity is true skirmish. There's other games that are as well. We talk about more time. We talk about any of those sort of things. But individual units or individual models, cool characters, quote unquote, as you want to put it, and just a very different system. I think that does it a good bit. I'm very curious to see what is it really going to look like. How are they going to do this? Their canceling mechanic. Like I said, I assume it's something like Infinity. I said Infinity is a roll under, but it's the high end roll under instead of low end roll under. But it's still that same sort of idea. So I'm very, honestly, I'm really excited to see what they do with this. And I'm really excited if they do it well. And I really hope they do. And I think they absolutely can. I think they have the talent and the process to do so. And without truly saying, they essentially said, hey, we wanted to do something different. And yeah, we do pay attention to the stuff that's out there and consider that, what we like to do and all of that. Again, look at the things that are out there and who's doing something good that you like the look of and how can you adapt it to your own system and do it well. Infinity is not the only game that does sort of thing, but it's the first one I thought of. So when I heard that, I said, hey, that's actually a really good idea because that's a good design that's being used and then you're using it for your own game. So I think what they're doing with First Blood could actually make First Blood legitimate. I feel weird saying that just for the simple fact that, yeah, it's a game. It was already was a game. But I kind of felt it was, if you're trying to teach someone the game, First Blood wasn't necessarily a great way to teach them. Because again, it was similar, but just different enough. But it didn't feel that it had a really good fairness, balance to it, sort of fun aspects. This game, even if it's rather different, can get you some models. Hey, let's get your First Blood starter set. Boom, here are these models. Let's play a game with them. Here's this fully fleshed out, fun game. Here, we'll go through this. Oh, okay, you've been enjoying that. Hey, let's find some other boxes. Let's graduate up to the full one. And we could play either, depending on the time that we have or what we want to do at the time. GW found this worked really well with Kill Team. Current Kill Team is, hey, here's a Kill Team box. Go buy that box. Buy it for any faction that you feel like. And Kill Team does play differently than normal 40k. It absolutely does. It has enough of, the feel that, yeah, I know I'm playing 40k, but the way the rules work, all of that is different. But hey, I'm using the models. I'm having fun with that sort of thing. And, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I do enjoy this sort of army, or I enjoyed painting these sort of things. Why don't I get a box of, or starter box? Why don't I get this other box and slowly start painting it up and things like that? What they found is that, one, it's a way to get people they wouldn't have before, because some people are willing to buy a box and some people are not willing to buy a full, 2,000 point army. And for the people who are more curious or giving it a shot or wanting to get in but unable to dip fully in or intimidated by dipping fully in, I can be playing. One of the biggest problems of Warhammer Fantasy of the past was, hey, you want to play Warhammer Fantasy? Do you have at least 1,500 points? Really, at the time we were playing 2,500? And realistically, if you didn't have 2,000, we're going to have a really bad day? Nope. Sorry. Yes, of course you can proxy anything you ever want at any point. But if you didn't have effectively a full army, you couldn't really do fantasy. There's no skirmish of that type that worked well. There was more time, of course, but that's a different story entirely. At least at the time when I was playing fantasy, it wasn't really a thing then, per se. So Kill Team, they figured it out. I'm hoping First Blood is their Kill Team. Essentially, that's their way to, hey, you want to play some games? I have this. Let's play it. You like it? Okay. Oh, there's that box. Paint the stuff up. Oh, you're enjoying them? Okay, let's try to get you maybe a starter set then. You'll be able to use all those models. Now you have the full TLK starter set. And you're getting close to enough points to at least play around with. You know, half point full games, like 1,000 point games, aren't necessarily the best. They're unbalanced per se, but I feel it's enough for you to learn the game and get a feel for it and have a decent time. So if that's the goal, it's a great way to build it up. So this went longer than I thought. That's absolutely fine. I wanted to just talk about some Weaver Court stuff and what they're going to do for First Blood. For Weaver Courts, like I said, very excited that they're going to have enough of a range to play with, because I feel right now, I'm going to probably say this in a video as well. When I think about Weaver Courts, I view them, when I think about power levels and all, I view them as a 10-story ballroom that I walk in on the 5th floor of. So think about old Poseidon Adventure or something like that, where you're effectively in the middle of this room. And there's, put a rope in if you want or anything like that. The ceiling, if you can figure it out, if you can climb that rope, if you can do the tough effort to get up there, I feel the ceiling's pretty high for Weaver Courts currently. Now again, maybe I'm wrong, but this is through playing the game, going through the thought process, thinking through a bunch of it, and trying some different pieces out, and essentially testing numbers and all. I feel their ceiling is actually quite high. But if you miss, if you slip, if you fall, you are going to fall hard. This is not a forgiving army, at least in my experience. You mess up, you're in bad shape. A lot of your units don't have great survivability. Yeah, they got a lot of speed. Speed is a great thing to have, but it can mean you could overextend yourself. You could very poorly position yourself. Anything like that. You make a mistake, a lot of the units will not be able to come back from that. When I think of Old Dominion is a great for new players or inexperienced players, or for just, being able to play even when you're tired, because, hey, you know what? I kind of got a feeling of how it works. Speeds are all very similar, a little bit slower. We don't resolve, so we're just tougher in general. And as you take down my stands, I get some cool bonuses. So if I go down a little bit early in terms of points, I get a little bit better. It lets me claw back. I feel like Weaver Courts are that sort of army where if you don't have it on the whole time, then you're in trouble. If you don't time out positions and where you're putting seed markers, when they're going off, and which seasons matter, and do some of them not. Specifically in the game that I played, I went against a Wadroon player, and he had a lot of Juggernaut, which meant, I believe it's Summer is the one that lowers their charge. I mean, Summer was useless. Okay, I want to avoid that, and all these sort of things. I feel it has, if you can get the click correctly, it does really, really well. But if you miss it, or you can't time it right, or you can't get it to the chips to fall the right way, you're going to have a bad time. You miss, there's not a lot of unstoppable overall. We have a way to get, like, essentially 2 dice take the best, effectively a reroll charge sort of thing. Yeah, but you need to get the seed markers to go off at the right time for them to bloom and all these sort of things. Like, if you can make it work, great. I think it's really, really tough to make it work. And I'm not 100% sold on that it truly does work to the level that they want or that they think it does. But I do think, at least in this hypothetical world, that if you get the timings right, and if you get the chips to fall correctly, that they are very, very strong. But that's a wait and see. I gotta get more games in. Hoping to get at least one, maybe 2 more games in this week. November that we're into is always a little bit of a busy month. Also, we have PAX Unplugged coming up in a few weeks. So that starts taking a bit of my bandwidth until that's over. And then by the time that's over, my semester's just about over. And I don't work during the winter, which means plenty of games and plenty more content. So that does it for this. Other things that you are going to see in the not too distant future, I am going to go through that game that I played against Wadroon. I'm probably gonna, tomorrow my hope is to see the other player so I can ask him what was in his list that he didn't see on Discord that I asked him about. but he's busy and he works at like an airport, so he might not have had, with all that's going on, he might not have been had the chance to notice all of that. I do have a learn to play that I just had to sit down and finish the editing on. I've done a bunch of the work, but I just have more to do, and been working on a bunch of other actual job related projects. So I have that. I have some board game videos I want to do, especially with PAX Unplugged coming up, especially once it's done, talking about the sort of things that we saw there. There is going to be a Conquest tournament there, painting required tournament. So if you are in the Philadelphia area, November, I believe it's November 21st, 22nd, 23rd. The Conquest tournament, I believe it's on Friday, I think. It might be Saturday. Don't quote me on that. No, I think the tournament's Friday. I think like a learn to play, paint a model thing is Saturday. I'm going to stop by, but I don't do tournaments at those sort of things because one, my wife is there and she's not going to play in a Conquest tournament. She has no interest in miniatures, but she does tons of board games. So we're going to be going around doing board game stuff. If you happen to be at the same convention, like I said, I'm going to go over there. I'll be all around. I will have a Terrain Kickers t-shirt. I usually make my wife wear one, at least on one of the days as well. So you'll see us there. But build up to, I have a few videos once that's over, then a few other things that I want to work on. And then for Conquest in general, just let me know the sorts of things people want talked about. I've been thinking, since it's been a while since I've done certain videos that now armies have changed, to go back and redo some of those or relook at them, or maybe do them in a bit of a different fashion. But to go back through and talk through, units and armies and stuff like that. So that's my current thought. But I haven't solidified on that, and I haven't had the time to sit down for several hours at a time. But all that time is coming. All right, well, that will do it for us for this one. Let me know your thoughts on the happy hour. What did you think? Did you watch it? And what is exciting you most? Is it the new stuff that's coming out? Is it waiting for maybe your Spires army to get redone, or your City States army to get redone? Or what new stuff they're going to give us in the next year? All right, well, on behalf of everyone at the show, then, have some good hobbying. It's great gaming.